Hi guys, it's Erin O'Connell with Baird & Warner. I'm here in Naperville, Illinois, and I want to talk about the compensation changes that have come into place this year and what that means for our buyers and sellers. So there have been lawsuits over the past couple of years regarding compensation. Historically, we saw that sellers were offering compensation to the buy-side brokerage with their listing that was listed in the MLS. It's no longer disclosed in the MLS, and the Department of Justice really wants sellers to pay their brokerage, buyers to pay their brokerage. They really want it split. This all kind of goes back to like the 90s. So the buyer's agent used to be a sub-agent of the seller. So the seller's agent, the buyer didn't have true representation. Both agents were working for the seller. And so in the 90s, they made it so that the buyer has representation. This is someone that's looking out for their best interest, someone that's keeping their information confidential, someone that's negotiating on their behalf. And so that was the difference in the 90s, but the seller was still paying for it until recently. And so what does that look like now for our buyers? When I meet a buyer, I've always sat down and done a buyer planning session with them. This is a consultation where we go through the process of buying a home. We go through what they're looking for, wants and needs, areas. We kind of look in the MLS and see what's available now. And we really plan through the whole process. We talk about financing, we talk about closing date, we talk about different areas of the contract where we can negotiate. And this planning session really kicks off and helps the buyers be prepared. But in that session, we're also signing an exclusive representation agreement. This says that the buyer and I are working together. I'm representing them as the buyer in a real estate transaction. And I do them exclusive, so my buyers aren't working with multiple agents unless they're looking in different states, then we would address that. But so in that agreement, they're agreeing to pay my compensation. Now, a lot of buyers don't have that extra money at closing. They're already paying for their down payment. They are already, they've paid for inspection, they've paid for appraisal, and then they have their closing costs, of course. So this is a lot of money that buyers have to bring to closing. So what I've been doing for all my buyers is when we submit a contract, we also submit an addendum where we're asking the seller to pay that compensation directly to the buyer's brokerage. And we have been able to negotiate this in most transactions over the past few months since this was put into place. If there's a multiple offer situation, it's just like any other negotiation point. You might need to raise the sales price a little bit for the seller to pay that. But the benefit of the seller paying the buyer broker compensation versus the buyer paying it is if the buyer pays it, they have to bring a check in full to pay at closing. If the seller pays it, the buyer can then lump that into their loan, their mortgage, and they're paying it monthly over 30 years. So that makes a big difference in terms of payment per time. And so that's what we're seeing for buyers. Luckily, with the market slowing down a little bit and we haven't had 20 offers anymore on homes, we have been able to negotiate the sellers to pay for that. And it will not always be a seller's market. And so a lot of the questions and hesitations about this compensation change are due to it being a heavy seller's market, where the sellers really have been calling all the shots, and there hasn't been a lot of room to negotiate on many areas of the contract for our buyers, but that's changing. For our sellers, I think this is a huge benefit to our sellers because every brokerage, there's no fixed price. So every agent is charging something different for their compensation, or different brokerages might have different setups and different numbers. And so for our sellers, if we're offering a flat amount, you might be leaving money on the table and giving that extra money to the buyer. So a buyer's broker can no longer accept more money than what's in their marketing agreement or buyer representation agreement with their buyers. So I'm just going to use fake numbers here. It's easier than X's and Y's, but if someone's offering 3% to the buyer brokerage and that buyer's agent only has an agreement for 2.5%, well, that extra 0.5%, the seller's still paying it because they offered it. And then that will be passed off to the buyer. So I think this is better for sellers because it really encourages buyers to really put their best foot forward. When people call and ask, because some agents are still calling and asking what the sellers are offering in terms of compensation. At Baird & Warner, we are not doing that. We're really keeping it separate. But if they call and ask, I always say, bring us an offer. It's going to be the strength of the price and the terms of the offer, and that compensation piece is just another piece of the offer. And so my sellers understand that what matters is the net amount that they are bringing home. It doesn't matter if someone's asking you to pay 5%. If that net number that you're bringing home is the same or is higher than what you're looking for, it really doesn't matter what you're paying and how it's set up. So it's really just a new way of thinking, but I really think this change is going to benefit both our buyers and our sellers. And buyers really are lucky to have the representation that they deserve, unlike back in the day before the 90s when everyone was working for the seller. This is so nuanced, and so I didn't go into all the details, but if you have any questions, you can always call me, text me. I love chatting about this stuff. Baird & Warner has been really top of the line in terms of training. Our lending team, Key Mortgage, has been also leading the charge in terms of how to get this bundled into the loan for our clients. They've actually done a lot of trainings with other loan officers and attorneys in the area because they were the ones really that were leading the industry and the changes. So if you have any questions, call me. But I really appreciate you letting me share this information with you. Have a good day.